First stop in here is to kind of ask and answer that question. Well, what exactly is storage spaces? Well, what it is it gives us the ability to, again, virtualize or use software-defined storage to add physical disks of any type and any size to a pool of available storage. In other words, once we add these disks to a pool of available storage, they become usable within that pool alongside the other members of that pool to create, like it says here, highly available virtual disks from it, which means well, any number of different things. Anyway, so you add the physical disks to the storage pool itself, and then you can create virtual disks utilizing the space that's in here. So to create the virtual disk in this context, it needs one or more physical disks to support on those things, a storage pool that includes those disks, virtual disks or storage spaces that are created with disks from the storage pool, and then of course the disk drives that become the volumes basically based on the virtual drives that are put together in there. So in other words, you start off with a physical disk, you add it to a pool, and then from that pool you create virtual disks that eventually get drive letters attached to them. But when you use two or more disks, then that opens up the possibility of things like redundancy, so mirroring or RAID 5 sets and all kinds of things, all of the stuff that goes along with that. So really what storage spaces does is it virtualizes the physical storage so that we can utilize all of it very, very easily. And so that's the notion behind all of this. There's a bunch of details that are available, but in particular, there's two new features that are described in this introduction to the lesson. Starting at position 17,589, we start talking about tiered storage spaces and then write-back caching as some of the features that are here. So anyway, take a look in your book there. So tiered storage spaces is a feature that lets you use a combination of disks in a storage space. So you could use very, very fast but small capacity hard disks like a solid state drive, along with slower, larger capacity but slower throughput disks together. When you use that combination of disks, what becomes possible is that storage spaces themselves will then start moving more frequently accessed information to the higher performance storage and less accessed stuff to the lower performing storage. In other words, stuff that gets accessed more frequently will give to you more quickly out of the storage spaces that's available. That's kind of a cool feature to have in there. Anyway, at this point in time, with the 2016 version of this, it recognizes more than the Windows Server 2012 limitation was only 2 disk tiers, SSD and non-SSD. This goes looks a little bit more in depth at the throughput levels that are contained within them, because there's, SSD, and then there's kind of fast SATA and not quite as fast SATA, and you get the idea from there, right? So we're more able to differentiate between those things now in this latest version. Write-back caching is another feature that's in here. So this it's optimizing writing data to the disks and storage. Basically, what it does is it allows writing data to faster disks first. And by default it says write-back caching is enabled, but it's also limited to 1 gigabyte of data. So for what it's worth, write-back caching gets stuff on disk a little bit more quickly.